Hey guys, today I will be making a prediction for the 2024 presidential election between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, the current and former president of the United States. And what's interesting is that we're almost 1.5 years since the 2020 presidential election, and the frontrunners for both parties are still exactly the same. On the Democratic side, you of course have Joe Biden, and on the Republican side, we have Donald Trump. And so the reason why Joe Biden's chances is only at 40, he would obviously by default win the nomination if he were to run for re-election. However, this 40% chance is more of his chances of actually running for re-election because he is, of course, the oldest president in American history, as well as the fact that he is not too popular at this moment in time. For the Republicans here, Donald Trump has consistently stayed at around 40%. Of course, he would have to go through a nomination process as he is no longer the incumbent president. However, it is very unlikely that he's going to lose if he were to run again. Ron DeSantis, even though he has a very good chance at winning the nomination, that is not a good chance against Donald Trump. That is his overall chances of winning, with the fact that Donald Trump might not run for a third time factored in. So Donald Trump and Joe Biden, these are two candidates that would automatically basically win their nominations if they were to announce their candidacy. So I'm going to start off by filling in the solid states for Joe Biden, giving him basically all of the states that he won by over 15% in 2020. These are states in which he is going to carry very, very easily. So this would give the current president 181 electoral votes. For Donald Trump, I'm going to do basically the exact same. With the polarization, especially in these very solid states, it's very unlikely that there's going to be too much of a shift. I'm going to give Kansas as a solid state to Donald Trump. He won it by 14.7 in 2020, so I think that margin is definitely going to go up. I'm also going to give Donald Trump the state of Indiana. So this is going to give Donald Trump 113 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 181 with just their solid states. And before I move on, make sure to join my Discord server if you have not, the link to which is at the very top of the description below. And so, with this map here, before I move on to the battleground states, these are states that are obviously going to have, a major deciding factor in who wins the election. These solid states have, are basically going to go to the respective candidates by default. But looking at the latest polls for the 2024 general election between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, of course, this is hypothetical polling, but currently Donald Trump leads by 3.9% according to RCP. RCP does not actually use all of the polls, so this is the polls that they have selected, and RCP is traditionally favoring the Republicans a little bit more. However, if you were to go on the Wikipedia page of all the polls that have been released, you have a lot more polls, and you see a clearer picture with both Joe Biden and Donald Trump winning, a lot of polls each. However, Joe Biden does show that he is, winning them a little bit more than the former president, at least in recent months. He, of course, won all of them until his administration became very unpopular in the month of August, after which Donald Trump started to lead in many of the polls released. So I think this polling data is not too consequential. Of course, this is the RCP aggregation at 3.8 in favor of Donald Trump. Now, I really do not think that this is too important. I don't think that Donald Trump winning by 3.9% is some big deal. If you do look at the 2020 election, you will see that at the end of the election, Joe Biden led by 7.2% over Donald Trump and ended up winning the election by 4.5% on the national popular vote. Now, just because Trump is ahead here does not mean that he would really be ahead if they were to go head-to-head in 2024. The only reason why Trump is leading is because Joe Biden is the incumbent president, and he is currently blamed for all the problems in the country. He currently has a negative 11% approval rating, while Donald Trump's favorability is at negative 12. So Joe Biden also has been consistently more popular than Donald Trump throughout his term, although very narrowly in recent weeks. However, the fact is that if they were to really run against each other, Joe Biden, I do not believe, is going to be down in the polls, by anywhere near 4%. I do think that he would be leading in the polls if they were to actually be the party's respective nominees in 2024. So I don't think this is going to be too big of a deal for Joe Biden right now. This is definitely not an indication that he's going to lose the election, but obviously it is not a good sign, as his party currently does control basically the entire government. These numbers are also reflected by the fact that, in generic congressional ballot polling, you do see that Republicans have continued to lead since the fall of last year. So for the Senate and House races in November this year, it is going to be a problem for the Democrats that they just do not have the support enthusiasm they need to win elections. And so now I'm going to move on to fill in the likely states on this map, starting off with the states of Colorado and New Mexico for Joe Biden. I think these two states are both going to remain over 5%. So by likely, I mean states in which either candidate is going to win by 5 to 15%. In both of these states, Joe Biden won Colorado by 13.5 in 2020 and 10% in New Mexico. I think it's going to stay around that range. I'm going to give Donald Trump the state of Alaska, another state that, he won by 10%. In 2016, it was 14.7%. In the state of South Carolina, 9 electoral votes for Donald Trump. Same thing here, won by 10% approximately in 2020. And I'm also going to give Joe Biden now the state of Virginia, another state this time. Joe Biden won by around 10%. So this does put Joe Biden over 200 electoral votes. I am also going to give him the states of Minnesota and New Hampshire, both states that Biden won by over 7% in 2020. The 7% was basically the margin. If you go to the 2016 election, though, you will see that Hillary Clinton barely won both of these states. So Joe Biden definitely made a real difference in both Minnesota and New Hampshire, and I think that he's going to hold on to both of these states in 2024. For Donald Trump, I'm also going to give him the states of Iowa and Ohio. These are states that Donald Trump famously flipped in 2016. If you look at the 2012 election map, you'll see Barack Obama won Iowa by 6% and Ohio by 3%. You fast forward 4 years to 2016, and Ohio votes for Donald Trump by 8%. That's an 11% swing, and Iowa by 9%. This is over 15% swing in favor of the Republican Party. So Donald Trump really has made a double-digit difference since 2012 in these two states of Iowa and Ohio. And the thinking was that, Hillary Clinton, very unpopular figure, almost lost New Hampshire, almost lost Minnesota, lost the election overall. The thinking was that in 2020, Joe Biden would be able to sweep the Rust Belt back for the Democratic Party like it was in 2012 and 2008, where Barack Obama even won Indiana. But in 2020, Joe Biden lost Ohio and Iowa by essentially the same margins. Joe Biden was not able to improve the Democrats' showing in these two states at all. Of course, he did flip back the upper Midwest, which won him the election. But in the end, Joe Biden made no real difference at all in both Iowa and Ohio. And so that is why I think that there's no chance that these two states are going to move from likely to lean. And so continuing on with the likely states for Donald Trump, we now have the big one, the state of Texas, 40 electoral votes. Donald Trump won this state by 5% in 2020. I don't think that margin is going to go down, although if you do look at the 2016 results, you'll see Trump only won the state by 9%. So it was a pretty sharp decrease, in just 4 years. But I do think that Donald Trump will be able to hold on to a 5% margin at least against Joe Biden in a potential rematch. I'm going to give Joe Biden the at-large vote in the state of Maine. That's going to give him 2 electoral votes, and this puts Joe Biden at 225 electoral votes and 188 for Donald Trump. And so before I go on to categorize the lean and tilt states, lean of course being margins of 1 to 5%, and tilt being margins of less than 1%, I want to take a look, at, just the fact that even though the Democratic Party is not doing well for the 2022 midterms, that Joe Biden still has a very good chance at winning re-election. Although, the Republican Party is clearly dominating the Senate elections with, expected wins in many battleground states. As you can see, these are the states that are going to see Senate elections in 2022. Democrats currently do hold both seats in Georgia and Arizona. However, the Democratic Party right now is not in a good position at all for the 2022 midterms. The Senate is currently 50-50 as shown, here after the 2020 general election, but they are probably going to lose the 2022 midterms. That is just a fact. If you look at the House map, it is going to be even worse for them. Redistricting has actually been a lot better than expected for the Democratic Party, but in the end, it is going to be very, very difficult for the Democratic Party to hold on to either the House or the Senate, and that may not exactly be that bad of a thing for Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. If you look back at the 1992 presidential election, where Bill Clinton won 370 electoral votes, you'll see that 2 years later in 1994 on the Senate level, the Republicans won 53 seats. They won back the Senate. After 1992, it was 57-43. So this was a gain of 10 seats and a net loss of 10 seats for the Democratic Party in just 2 years. However, in 1996, Bill Clinton easily won his re-election with 379 electoral votes. And you'll see that, in 1996, Democrats did even worse in the Senate, but on the presidential level, Bill Clinton was still able to win, the election back. And if you look at the 1984 election, where Ronald Reagan won every single state in the country except for Minnesota, in which he barely lost by less than 0.2%. You go to 1986, and you see the Democratic Party has won the Senate. In 1984, it was 53-47 in favor of the Republicans. But then, just 2 years later, 2 years after Ronald Reagan won basically the largest electoral college victory in history, in 1986, the Democrats gained 8 seats in the Senate. However, in 1988, we still saw the very successful re-election, or the very successful election of George H.W. Bush. And this was the only time in which one party has held the presidency for 3 consecutive terms since FDR and Harry Truman. So essentially, since the Second World War, this was, the only time in which one party has won the presidential elections 3 times in a row. And so you'll see that these Senate elections, they normally are always bad for the party that just won. However, in the next presidential election, things do change because the party of the president is normally no longer in power. And that really is a big deal because of the fact that, the things that are happening in the country would be blamed on the opposite party, not the party of the president anymore, because the president's party is not in power anymore. The president's party is no longer able to pass whatever laws it wants. And so that's why even if Joe Biden and the Democrats lose the midterms in 2022, they are not going to be in just automatically a very bad position for 2024. This happens all the time. Most presidents win their re-elections, and most presidents also do see losses in the midterms directly following their election efforts. So to fill in the lean states on this map, I'm going to start off with the state of Nevada, 6 electoral votes. I think the margin is going to stay over 1%. The state of Nevada has been trending to the right recently. If you look at the 2012 election, you'll see Obama won the state by 7%. You go back 4 years, it's 12% for Barack Obama, but in both 2016 and 2020, Joe Biden only won the state by 2.4%. 2016, Hillary Clinton still only 2.4%. So I do think that the Republicans are probably going to make gains in the state, but not enough for them to actually flip it, and I think the margin is going to remain over 1%. In the state of Michigan, this was a state that Joe Biden won by 2.8% in 2020. He flipped it back from Trump's margin of 0.2% just 4 years before that, and so, essentially flipping the blue wall was what gave Joe Biden the electoral victory. He did not need Arizona or Georgia, but he definitely did need these 3 states, and especially the state of Pennsylvania. That was a state that got him over the line. So, in the state of Pennsylvania, I do think the race is going to be a lot closer, and I don't think Biden is going to win it by over 1%. However, for the lean states for Donald Trump, I'm going to start off with the state of Florida. I think the state of Florida is obviously going to go to the former president. This state has done very well under Donald Trump. In 2012, of course, it was still in Obama territory. In 2016, Trump beat Clinton by 1.2%, and I think to a lot of people's surprise, he did even better in 2020, winning the state by 3.4%. This was a state in which Joe Biden massively outpolled Donald Trump, but Donald Trump still ended up winning the state of Florida by an even larger margin, a 2.2% gain. This is really one of the only states in which Donald Trump actually did better in 2020 than in 2016. I'm going to give Donald Trump the 2nd District of Maine. I think he's going to hold on to that, as well as the state of North Carolina and the 16 electoral votes. I really don't think anytime soon the Democrats are going to be able to win in North Carolina. The last time a Democrat won in the state was in 2008, where Barack Obama barely defeated John McCain. This was the only time Democrats have won the state since the election of Jimmy Carter in 1976. 1976 was the last time that North Carolina voted for the Democratic Party. Party, with the exception of 2008, where it very, very narrowly went to the former president. And so I think that the state of North Carolina is not going to be flipped by someone like Joe Biden. Joe Biden is not going to flip the state of North Carolina. I think Democrats are going to need a very special candidate in order to do that. You saw on the Senate level, failures by Cal Cunningham to defeat Tom Tillis in 2020, and you're probably going to see the exact same thing in 2022 with Ted Budd, probably going to be defeating Sherry Beasley in that race. So I don't think North Carolina is going to flip anytime soon for the Democratic Party. So I'm going to obviously keep it in the Republican column. And now we have 4 more tilt states left, and this is really going to decide who wins the election. So I'm going to start off with the state of Georgia. I don't think Joe Biden is going to win it again. This was a very historic flip at the first time Georgia had voted for a Democrat since 1992, and the first election of Bill Clinton. That was the last time that any Democrat had won before Joe Biden's 0.2% victory in 2020. And I think that, obviously Joe Biden is just not going to have the same sort of enthusiasm behind him as he did when he was challenging the very unpopular incumbent president. So I think Georgia is going to be in the Republican column. I also have the state of Wisconsin. I think Donald Trump is going to win back Wisconsin. It's 10 electoral votes. Joe Biden actually won Wisconsin by a smaller margin than Trump did in 2016. So I will be putting Wisconsin back in the Trump column. And then for the state of Pennsylvania, I will be giving Pennsylvania to Joe Biden as well. This was his birth state. This is also a state that he won by over 1% in 2020. I think he will be able to hold on to the state very, very narrowly. And this puts Biden at 265, Donald Trump at 261. And finally, for the state of Arizona, I will be giving it to Joe Biden. I do think that he will be able to hold on to this state, a state that has, spent the last decade shifting more and more to the left, and a state in which Democrats have won Senate elections in both 2018 and 2020. So this gives Joe Biden 276 electoral votes to Donald Trump with 261 electoral votes. And I think that this is a pretty good map for the 2024 election. I'm also going to give the 2nd District of Nebraska as tilt for Joe Biden. So I actually forgot that. So 277 for Joe Biden to 261 for Donald Trump. Even though Joe Biden is losing in the polls right now, that is no indication that he will be come election time in 2 years. There's absolutely no correlation between his polling numbers right now, because right now none of these candidates have declared their candidacies, and Joe Biden, as the incumbent president, the person that people blame all the problems on, he is inherently going to be losing in the polls. And I think that a 2022 midterm loss for the Democratic Party is not going to shatter their chances in the 2024 general election. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you like it down below if you enjoyed it. Comment down below who you think would win between a Joe Biden and Donald Trump rematch. Subscribe to my channel if you have not, and I will see you guys in the next video.